Unfailing God, you go before me. My every breath is held in your grace.
Welcome to episode 6 of our series called Worship Leading for Small Churches. If you missed any of the other previous episodes, go back and watch those. There's great stuff in all of those, and we'll probably reference some of the stuff we talked about in the previous ones in this episode. Talking about this episode, the topic that we're touching on is which equipment do you need on a budget? I'm talking about what's the big picture stuff you need for putting a praise team together, for having a PA system. Once again, I'm joined by Josh Powell and Rachel Wiley of Transmission. Thank you guys for joining me throughout these episodes.
Yeah, man.
It's been fun. Been great conversation. Let's keep that going. How do you start a budget for a worship team? I'll start with you, Josh.
Yeah, that's tricky, and this is one of those things that you're not going to be able to do this on your own as a worship leader unless you got deep pockets. That is not me. I don't have the pockets. But truthfully, this is something that that worship leaders need to work hand in hand with your senior pastors, because at the end of the day, the equipment that you use to reproduce sound, graphics, anything that supports worship in your church, this is an investment in the quality of worship in your church, and it's something that you really shouldn't take lightly. I think gone are the days when you could go down to the Circuit City or the Best Buy and just pick up some off-the-shelf speakers and sound system type equipment, because the need for supporting worship has only grown, especially since COVID. So we're kind of at the level now where we need to be investing in the type of equipment that we have, because it's going to serve you well in the long term. And that comes down to money, unfortunately. It's the topic that nobody really wants to discuss, but it takes money to really do something well that involves technology and worship. Not even just contemporary worship or praise and worship, but just supporting the worship services at your church. It falls into the same category. So how do you get money to do this? How do you find a budget for upgrading or even installing a sound system in the first place? You got to work with your pastor. Your pastor is going to be the keeper of all things money, and even if he doesn't solely handle the finances of your church, he's going to be able to get the right people into the room and have the right discussions to say, hey, this is what we need in order to really make worship a distraction-free, productive environment for us. So work with your pastor, and then together you can figure out what your priorities are, what's most important, and how you can achieve them. I think this really needs to it needs to be a conversation from a stewardship perspective as well. There's no question that this kind of equipment is not cheap. It costs a lot of money in the long run, and for a lot of churches, you really rely on the tithes and the offerings that your congregants give. And maybe this is something that you can say, you can come to your congregation, you can say, look, we want to invest in the worship environment of our church. Maybe we have a special collection just for the sound system. You can lay out, this is what we want to achieve, this is what it will look and sound like after, this is who we're bringing in, who are experts, and they say, we will be able to achieve the best quality sound. This is what we would need in order to make this happen. And special collections like that sometimes are very helpful for that kind of thing. And then as you're building your budget, and I'll say this a couple of times in this episode, but let me caution you, don't skimp out on equipment.
Yeah.
If you buy cheap equipment, it's not going to sound good, and it's going to fail quickly. I know this from personal experience. I tend to be a cheap person, but when it comes to sound and media equipment, don't get cheap stuff. There's an old adage that says, buy once, cry once. It is painful at first, but if you buy good quality equipment, it's going to really serve you well for years.
Yeah,
to
you
come.
you want it to last,
Yeah.
and that's the biggest thing is that if when a budget is put together, when you've talked with your pastor, that money can't just appear from anywhere.
Yeah.
That's taking money from other budgets, from other programs that could be going on, money that's allotted elsewhere, probably a cut of all of that. So you have to be diligent and specific with what you're purchasing, because you don't want that common that purchase to become the same replacement.
Yeah.
We bought this speaker that wasn't a good investment, and then we've had to replace it 4 or 5 times. What's your take on having a budget and building a budget?
Yeah, I think identifying what your priorities are
Yeah.
within your team, and that for me, it's looking at what is the team that I have now, and what is the team that I see myself having in the next 1 to 2 years.
Yeah, planning ahead.
Because when you go into those talks with your pastor, they're gonna want to know the numbers. They're gonna because, like you said, it has to come from somewhere. So if you can identify your priorities, you know that you need new mics, or maybe you don't even have mics yet, or that just whatever you decide are your team's priorities, going into that with those numbers in hand, and we're going to talk about some of those specific items. But if you can present them with a realistic plan or a realistic list of items for them, if you are a 2-person team at the moment, maybe you're looking into the future when you have maybe 3 or 4 members. But if you walk into these conversations with your pastor and you say, okay, we're a 2-person team, but I want enough equipment for a 10-person team, and I want all the bells and whistles, and there's no, he's or she is not going to see where that's coming from, and how is the money that we have here at our church then filling all of that if we don't have those individuals yet.
Yeah.
So I think being really realistic with enough wiggle room for building in the future,
growth,
for
yeah.
growth, right? But keeping it
Yeah,
simple.
because like in my experience, like you really need to plan for the growth. And in real terms, like you're probably only going to get this opportunity maybe once every 10 years to
Yeah.
really sink a substantial amount of money into your equipment. So you don't want 2 years down the road to come to your pastor and say, "Hey, I know we just did an upgrade, but we're still not really
We've
meeting
outgrown
the
the
need."
upgrade.
Yeah, yeah. So plan-
or we've outgrown the upgrade.
yeah. You've
Yeah.
outgrown the upgrade, so you have to plan for the growth. Yeah.
Yeah, but like you said,
Within
be
reason.
within reason.
Yeah.
Be diligent of that. Yeah. So let's say, like what are the basic necessities that a church needs for a praise band? Let's be specific about like a PA system.
Yeah.
Like Josh, what does a praise team really need to start?
So, I mean, the praise team really falls under the umbrella of what are the tech needs for your church. So there aren't really specific equipment needs per se in terms of the sound system that wouldn't also be needed by elsewhere in the church. And that probably works to your advantage because it's not like you saying, hey, the praise team needs this. It's more of you coming to your pastor and say, the church needs
Yeah.
this, right? So it's gonna serve more people if you come at it from that perspective. But what do you need? So your PA system, so that would be your main speakers, which would then be fed by all the infrastructure that would be connected to your main speakers, like your wiring and your power amps. But then your mixer is kind of the brain of the whole sound system. Whether it be analog or digital, I would encourage you, if you're buying something new now, buy a digital mixer. They really have gotten way better than they used to be, way more volunteer friendly to use and cheaper. So
And then also you can grow with that more.
you can grow,
It's
yes.
easier for digital boards to grow.
Yes. So a digital mixer is kind of the standard now for small and big churches. There's a lot of great resources for learning how to use them. So don't be afraid of the digital mixer now. They're very easy to use. And then on the front end, it's your microphones and your cables. So what in particular for praise bands, it's the microphones good quality cables, and then monitors so that you can hear yourself. So those are the more praise band specific type PA equipment. Yeah.
Yeah, and cables are like the veins in your
Yeah,
body. They're easily so they can be the ones that usually take a back seat.
Yeah.
But this is what's controlling and connecting everything
Yep.
together. So we can't forget about the
Don't,
cables.
Don't skimp on cables.
Don't
either.
skip on cables at all. There's many things can go wrong with a bad cable.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're exactly right. If we come to our pastor and we approach it as, hey, the church would benefit with this with a PA system
Yeah.
if you don't have one already,
Yeah.
or an upgraded one, or however you'd like to do that, then it just goes, oh, well, now it includes all of us
Yeah.
instead of just the praise team needing that specifically. That's great. But then even with that, a lot of churches now have a PA system. It could be an analog board. What you have, you're already blessed with, and make sure that you use that
Yeah.
while you have it now.
Yes.
Right.
If it is in good working condition, maybe that takes a back seat to something else.
Yeah. For sure.
That your church, that your team may need. So it's you use what you have already. Do you have anything on that?
No, I think Josh is right. And to your point that you just made, if you do have that equipment that still works and is
Yeah.
still in good condition, by all means, like you said, it can take a back seat. We're not trying to just get the latest and greatest because we want the latest and greatest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're talking, when we say necessities, we're talking needs. What are the gaps that you need filled for your team to be successful, for the church to successfully be able to worship together corporately? And really, because from a pastor's perspective, if they see that you maybe aren't using what you have there and it's still usable and workable, they're probably not going to approve purchasing something just because it's a little newer and a little shinier. Now, if you are working with mics that are just absolutely not doing the job,
Yeah.
then that's obviously you can kind of tell with those things. But making sure that we're being good stewards of what we have
Yeah.
until it gets to the point that really we have to do a replacement.
And there's a lot of maintenance that you can do, like just routine maintenance to keep old equipment alive and in good shape. If you've, I come across a lot of old analog boards that, as you turn things, it crackles a little bit, and people get really scared about that. It really is just dirt. The more you work them, the cleaner it becomes. But if your old equipment is starting to drop out altogether, and if it won't power on, then it may be time to upgrade. But general maintenance can go a long way to keep old equipment in good working order for you for a long time.
Yeah. Now, what equipment does a small church, if they're starting, if it's you by yourself, what are things that the praise team may not necessarily need to start? What can take a back seat that maybe a larger praise team, maybe it's something that they could benefit from. But what about a small team, like the things that are out there
Yeah.
that they probably don't need?
I think if you're coming up on it's a very tight budget and you're trying to make upgrades, I think the first thing that I'm taking off my list are wireless microphones.
Yeah.
Wireless microphones they're a big help when they're good and they're good quality and deployed well. But it takes a little bit of knowledge to properly deploy them, and you have to buy good ones. And wireless microphones are very expensive.
Yeah.
Good wireless microphones are so expensive. So that's usually it creates sticker shock for people when I go out and I'll help people build sound systems, and they tend to want to buy the cheap wireless microphones, and I'll tell you, they're not worth it. They sound bad. You'll have dropouts often. At that point, just don't use them. Just go with wired microphones like this. A wired microphone is never going to drop out.
Yeah.
It's never going to lose batteries. You're never going to misplace them under a pew from when somebody just drops it from wherever they are. So just go wired microphone.
Yeah.
It's cheaper, it's more reliable, and they sound better.
Yeah, with a good quality cable.
With a good quality
a
cable.
wired mic will sound great than and probably be cheaper.
Oh, yeah.
Than a cheap wireless
Yes.
microphone.
Yep.
What do you think? What are things that a big praise team would be looking at upgrading that a small church doesn't need to focus on right now?
Yeah, one of the first things that comes to mind for me, if we're looking at instruments now, if we're kind of shifting to that side of things, is there's always the desire to want, for me personally, keyboards that do everything and have all the bells and whistles. And, I think specifically of like a Nord that just has all the plugins and everything you could ever think of doing. But if you're a smaller team and you really do only have 1 or 2 people, you may not need that, first of all, just for what you're doing as a team. But especially if you already have a decent keyboard, maybe tucked away in a closet somewhere, or if you're lucky enough to have an upright or something like that that's tuned regularly, then maybe we don't have to go on that higher end. It's looking at needs too. You don't, like Josh said earlier, you don't want to skimp. You don't want to just get that $100 acoustic guitar, from the next door neighbor kind of thing. But it doesn't always have to be top of the line.
Yeah.
If what you're needing to do doesn't require that.
Yeah, I mean, my church right now, we don't have a keyboard. We've got a mic on an upright. That's all. That's what's needed. A mic on a cable, so it's reliable.
Yeah.
We have a mic on an upright.
Yeah, and spend the money having a piano tech come out and
Exactly.
tune the piano, get it in good, like for $200, you can get a piano tuned and in good serviceable condition that'll last you for a few months. You might spend $500 a year tuning a piano if you're going to be like very diligent about tuning it. Like that's probably the most that it would cost you, and that would serve you long, and it would be a great sounding piano.
Yeah. One thing I'd say that can take a back seat and probably be for another future upgrade to come is in-ear monitors.
Yeah.
Like they're great. Those are great. But if it's just a team of 1 and 2, and you have one monitor on the floor already, that's not an upgrade that I would prioritize.
Yeah.
If it's just 2 people with an acoustic guitar and a vocal, or acoustic guitar and piano, like we can work off of wedges. The audio, stage audio from that monitor can be low enough because it's just a small group.
Yeah.
That can be something that's pushed back till later for in-ear monitors. It's also very, very expensive, wired or wireless.
Yeah.
It's very, very expensive either way that you go. So in-ear monitors is what I would take with that there.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. So Josh, you go to different churches and present them with, this is the amount that you need with different options. I think you've actually sent me one a couple times. Is what are you looking at for like a ballpark range of a minimal upgrade of? I know there's a wide range.
Yeah,
but
it is a huge range, and I think it really comes down to what are you trying to replace?
Yeah.
If it's just, if you're trying to move away from an old analog console to a digital mixer, like a good quality 32 channel digital mixer, you can pick one of those up for $2,500, $3,000, and they'll last you for years, a decade. If you're looking at replacing main speakers, it's a little bit of a different equation. And I would encourage you for something like that, especially speakers, anything you're hanging. You need to call in an expert, an integrator is what they call them, to come in and look at your space. Because an integrator, they'll take measurements of your room. They'll tell you what speakers and in what configuration would be the best, so that every seat in your auditorium has even coverage. And that's the biggest thing with sound, is making sure that you have even sound coverage across the entire room. You don't have hot spots and cold spots. But an integrator has the measurement equipment to do that, and they're also going to be licensed and insured to hang these speakers that are 100 pounds apiece over people's heads. That's not something you want to do.
I would say if you're not qualified to do that, don't try.
Yeah.
If that's the way that your budget works and you're going that route, bring somebody in. Don't hang them yourself.
It's worth it, because then, like, if something goes wrong, you have someone to call in and say, hey, this isn't working, as opposed to like if you and some do-it-yourself people, well-intentioned people in your church, decide to do this, to put this install together. If something goes wrong and you don't quite know how to fix it, there's no one to call at that point.
But a main speaker on a speaker pole, that's higher than the tallest person
Yeah.
or at the tallest person's ears
Yeah.
works just fine.
Yeah.
Right. We want everybody in the spot in the congregation, every spot to be able to hear.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. But maybe not spending money on hanging stuff if you don't have that in your budget.
Yeah.
Speakers on speaker poles work just fine. They will be great. So, like you said, ballpark ranges, like a ballpark range for upgrade can be anything.
Yeah, I mean, you can. I mean, it really depends on the size of your room,
Yeah.
and if you're trying to replace an entire sound system with like speakers, mixer, cables, microphones. I mean, like a very very basic sound system, you could spend $10,000, and that's probably basement level.
Yeah.
But then I've also worked with churches that will spend
much
$250,000
Yeah.
on a sound system. So it is a very big range, and for something like that, it would benefit you talking with someone to say, this is what we're trying to accomplish. What do you know that is out there that is within this budget that we can get in that would accurately suit our needs?
And I think that we'd all agree it's about prioritizing.
Yeah.
Like we said earlier, if you have a mixer that works just fine, could be an analog board, but you only have one speaker,
Yeah.
and it's on one side.
Yeah.
Maybe upgrading to just another speaker, which could just be a couple $100 that you're then matching the speakers.
Yeah.
Or spending it to raise up, buy speaker poles.
Yeah.
To raise it up. That's just a simple investment that'll make the sound automatically better.
Mm-hmm.
So the audio is not hitting your congregation's feet.
Yeah.
So things like that. Rachel, I'm gonna throw it over here to you. How would you go about creating a strategy? We touched on this a little bit with like making sure you have a plan and prioritizing. But how would you go about as a worship leader? You're planning before. There's that planning word again. Before going to your pastor or your church leaders, how would you go and make that list and like this is present it to them?
Yeah. Well, so in the preparation, I've looked at what my team is now, what I'm hoping for my team to be in the future, and making that list of what it is that I think that would serve us well. In that list, when I go to my pastor, I'm also including why I need these things and how I plan to use these things so that I have backing for when those questions come, because they will come. Why are we spending this money? Why do we need this model of something? So if you can already have those answers thought through so that you can come into the conversation prepared, it's always helpful. And typically your pastor's not doing it because they don't want the church to have these items. It needs to be justified why we're making the purchases that we're making. Going about it that way, I'm also probably, and this is kind of a smaller point a bit, but when I'm looking at doing an upgrade, I'm going to also look at the calendar for my church. Because if we're going to be in the middle of maybe switching out a whole console or middle of replacing speakers or something like that, I'm not going to do it the week before our big Christmas service or our big Easter service, because it's going to take time to get everything set in place. It's going to take time for your then sound techs to learn all the new things.
Learning process.
And make sure that they're trained on it. So logistically, I'm doing this far enough out in advance that we can have this conversation with the pastor. We can look at the logistics of all of it and then make sure things are in order with probably our bigger services of the year.
Yeah, and presenting that as to why we need to replace this. This one specifically will help us do that.
Right.
And then all of that is very, very important. One thing that I like to do is you're presenting an item to your pastor, to your church leaders. But also, like you have to have the amount next to it. But you can also always be looking for deals. You can always be looking for
Absolutely. I
used
love a
of that
bargain.
model because everybody's like there's thousands and thousands of churches, and a lot of the equipment is used already, right? And people are using it and they're doing their own upgrades, selling the other ones.
Yeah.
And if they're used, that'll be very, very helpful to you because then it drops the total.
Yeah. In the vein of used equipment is great, provided that the stuff is well taken care of. But if you buy from a reputable online used equipment distributor, I think the chances are good that it's the equipment is going to be in good shape. There's a couple of websites that I like to use when trying to find used equipment. One is called Reverb.com. Reverb.com is a great place to find used music gear. So whether that's guitars, keyboards, drums, and also sound equipment as well. But then if you're looking for like sound, like church sound system used gear, there's a website called churchgear.com that buys used church sound equipment, and then they'll refurbish them and then sell them out as used equipment. So reverb.com and churchgear.com are good resources for that.
Yeah. And then when you make your list, what I'd recommend is put all the lists, dream big, right? Create a list on what your idea is for items that you want to upgrade or items that you need for your praise team, and then be realistic, like you said, and prioritize those. What would be beneficial for my church, for my praise team first?
Yeah.
Out of all of these, like I said, I have a mic on an upright right now, on an upright piano. Keyboard might be higher up on the list because of what we have now.
Yeah.
But other things could easily jump that, and it has before. That's why we just throw a mic on an upright.
Yeah.
It's really prioritizing, and you don't always need the top of the top of the top line equipment. Of course, we want to purchase good quality equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we don't need the top down when you're searching for online, high to low. We don't always need that thing in the first slot.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, maximize what you already have. Just reiterating these points.
Yeah.
Use the PA system that you have now. You don't always need to replace that. Use an upright piano or a grand piano if you have that. Just put a mic on it, and then that'll go through your sound system. These are ways that you can use the equipment that your church already has.
Yeah.
All right, let's dive into things. Josh, for PA systems, what equipment would you recommend? I know there's a million things out there, but like just what are some options there?
Yeah. Like I said, PA systems are kind of tricky because you don't really know your space, but just powered speakers have come a long way in the amount of dispersion that they can throw sound. So they've done a great job at developing powered speakers. I like powered speakers because you don't need a separate power amp.
It's one less item.
It's one less item. So you just have to run a signal cable, and then you have to have power somewhere near where the speaker will sit. But they're really easy to service. QSC makes a great line, the K series line of speakers. Those are some of my favorites. The 12-inch is always it's a good classic front of house speaker. So the QSC speakers.
And I think QSC would make monitors as well.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, for sure. And you can get like they make a 15-inch speaker, a 12-inch speaker, a 10, and an 8. So the 15 and 12 are usually good sizes for like front main speakers because the range that they of frequencies that they can reproduce are larger, so they can get down a little bit lower into the sub frequencies. But the 8-inch and the 10-inch are great for monitors because they're smaller, but they still have a ton of output. Yeah.
And then within that, subwoofers aren't needed.
Yeah, for the, if you like they help produce like the kind of the rumble in your chest kind of thing, but it's not necessary,
Especially for small teams. I mean, if you're playing guitar by yourself, you're not putting anything into the subwoofer anyway. If you're playing piano, like that, the low range can be replicated through your mains anyway. So you mentioned digital mixers, and that's kind of where everybody's going, but not everybody has that money for a digital mixer. And something that like an analog board that you can purchase is the Yamaha MG series. They make a small one with maybe 4 or 6 channels, all the way up to 20 channels, which could be plenty more than what you have. Or than what you have at the moment. You may not have 20 channels, but you got to remember when purchasing that it's not specifically for just the praise team. It's going to be for the pulpit.
Has to be
it's going to be for in-house audio if you're playing like walk-in music. It's going to be for all of that. But that MG series for an analog board.
They're great. They're kind of a hybrid board because they still have digital effects built into them, so it would have some reverb and delay built into the board. Although I will say, like the digital mixers in general have come down in cost. Like I think the difference between a similarly channeled Yamaha MG analog console and Yamaha's digital console is only maybe $400 or $500 difference. So, like for instance, Yamaha has just released a 16-channel digital console called the DM3 that I actually have put hands on now, and it is fantastic. So, for small churches, for $2,000, you can get the 16-channel Yamaha DM3. It is everything you would need. It has all the processing, all the effects that you would ever need. And one of the reasons I like digital mixers is because it has scene recall. So you can save once you get your settings sounding right, you can save it to a scene. If the next Sunday you have a guest speaker come in, when after the guest speaker is gone, you can recall the scenes from the previous Sunday, and like everything is just saved. So you can save scenes, and then you also have iPad or tablet control as well. So for a solo worship leader, like I am a lot of the time, I can run my own monitors and my own EQ and gain for my guitar from my iPad without needing more of a qualified sound tech. So that's the reason I like digital mixers. But there's a little bit of a learning curve with them, and they are slightly more expensive. But in the long run, I think they're worth it.
That scene recall's helpful.
Yeah.
Because if somebody comes and messes with
Mm-hmm.
messes with the lead vocal microphone, you can just recall that. It'll come back.
Come right back.
Speaking about microphones, I think the only thing that really specifically needs a microphone is just vocals. Anything else added, maybe something on a guitar amp or drums, is an extra because those are already loud enough. The human voice, like that's why PA systems were invented, is to make voices louder, because just inherently it's not as loud as a drum set.
Yeah.
So what microphones would you recommend for a church on a budget?
Yeah. I really like the Shure brand, Shure, if you're spelling it out. But they have a SM58 that will run you about $100, and that it'll do everything that you need it to do. And $100 is usually you can get that agreed to by a pastor. So
Industry standard.
It is industry standard for a reason. Those things they take a licking and keep on ticking. Yeah.
They what?
I've seen people use a 58 as a hammer.
You're
And
joking.
I know, and they still work. They're great. I don't know what they do to them, but there's magic sauce in the SM58.
Well, you heard it here.
Yeah.
Go get you one.
You'll find those microphones everywhere.
Yeah.
Even like big recording studios.
Yes.
They have 8 or 10 SM58s.
That's all you need.
Yeah. It works on everything, but it's great for vocals.
Yeah.
Just in case if things happen, if people drop them.
Yeah.
But
Or use
also
it as
they
a
sound
hammer.
good, or use them as a hammer, and they're also wired. So going into that, cables, you can find cables anywhere, and that's the scary part.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of bad cables. I know we mentioned this earlier. I really like these Sweetwater brand cables. They come in multiple different sizes, from maybe a 6-inch, which I don't know why you'd ever need
Interconnect cables.
that short of a cable, but then all the way up to like a 50-foot XLR cable, which is what plugs into a microphone. It's not a plug for Sweetwater or anything, but those cables work great, and it's really important to spend money on good quality cables.
Yeah.
Like you might be able to cut corners a little bit elsewhere, but cables, like we
Yeah.
said earlier,
Get good
you
quality
cannot
cables.
get good quality cables.
Yeah.
And then Josh, you might want to introduce us to DI boxes maybe a little bit, and then have like a suggestion on what a DI box would be, and why it's used for. So.
Yeah, a direct injection box is what DI stands for, direct injection. There's a lot of science that goes on, including impedance matching between like a high impedance instrument and a low impedance sound system. So what it's doing is it's just making the two sources kind of talk well with each other. But practically, what you would use it for is to take something that like a guitar or a keyboard that has 1/4-inch connection and turning it into XLR connection so you can plug it into a sound system.
Instrument cable to microphone cable,
Yes.
right? Yeah, and then that'll go straight to your board.
Yep.
And work just fine.
Yep, and if you're going to kind of get nitpicky about things, some guitarists will have what's called an active pickup, meaning if your guitar has a battery, it's an active pickup, and you would usually pair an active source with a passive direct box, or vice versa. Like my guitar doesn't have a battery, which means it's a passive pickup. So then I would buy an active direct box. So you would kind of balance them that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. So getting out of the realm of like PA systems, let's talk about instruments. We'll start with guitars. We had two guitar players here. What's something that's like, if a guitarist was joining a praise band,
Yeah.
what kind of guitar would they be looking for? Maybe not like a specific, you have to buy this
Yeah.
guitar, but
I mean, guitars, I'll say this as a guitar player, they are it's a very personal decision.
Yep.
Like, I think the guitars speak differently to different people. So the first thing I'd say, if you're buying a guitar, go out and just play them.
Yeah.
Like, just go to Guitar Center, Sam Ash, if you have them nearby you. Just go play like as many guitars as you can find, and then you'll start to develop or you'll find the sound that you like, and then that's the sound that you should go for. If you get a guitar that has a pickup built into it, it'll make it easier for you to get into the sound system. If you don't have a pickup, you'll have to put a mic in front of the guitar, which does work. I mean, there's a lot of people do it that way, but an open microphone on a stage increases your potential for feedback. So we like guitar pickups because it eliminates more potential for feedback. But in general, you just want to play a bunch of guitars. If you're looking for guitar recommendations, there's a company called Eastman that is making really great sounding solid wood acoustic guitars for affordable cost. So check out Eastman if you haven't seen those yet.
So then, Rachel, as a novice pianist or whatever, keyboardist, what are some keyboard recommendations that you're looking for a praise band that has a low budget that's trying to upgrade to get a keyboard?
Yeah, so definitely something that's not going to break the bank. So Yamaha has some great options out there. Your minimum, they've gone up in price, so you're looking at a minimum of $700 probably for something that.
Keyboards.
Yeah,
on the rise.
It's on the rise, but they're definitely. I mean, they're so versatile. You can use it for so many things, and not just contemporary worship either. Like we've talked about, buying equipment that is going to serve your entire church. So it's. I mean, for congregational songs or offertories or things like that, it's probably not going to just be one person using it. So it's definitely worth the money. I would suggest I have a preference for weighted keys. I just like it. You could do semi-weighted, but I like nice and heavy, just giving a little more realistic feel for an actual piano.
Yeah, because if you're having a pianist come and join you who's played on a real piano,
Yeah.
you don't want one that only has 2 octaves that has no weight to it.
Yeah.
And then of course, obviously the cheaper the keyboard, the cheaper the sounds.
Yeah.
But you're looking for weighted keys.
Yeah.
Like weighted keys that's gonna feel more like an acoustic piano.
And I would say too, for any of these recommendations that we're giving, try them out if you can. If you can go to a Guitar Center or somewhere where you can get your hands on this equipment, because realistically, you are spending a chunk of change on it.
Yeah.
So you're gonna want to buy something you know for a fact that you like, and not something that just gets shipped to you and now you're kind of stuck with it.
Yeah.
So same thing for keys. If you can find a music store, sit down, try a couple out, and really see what you like.
Yeah, I like the Yamaha P125. It's very user friendly.
Yeah.
It's one button and it changes the sound. Like there's 4 different piano options. There's 4 different electric piano options. It's got some organ options in there too. Ones that may not work in praise and worship, like harpsichord, but
Nice.
but it's got that, and it's weighted keys. It's 88 keys, so you have the full range of the piano. Which what we talked about in a couple episodes is that you want, if you have a pianist and an acoustic guitar player, piano is having that lower range that the guitar doesn't offer or doesn't have to play.
Yeah.
So full 88 keys is useful in that. And then adding some other options that then when your groups get bigger, when you have people come join, electric piano would be nice, or having an organ with specific different songs.
Yeah.
But yeah, those would be great there. Jumping into I think unintentionally, I've gone more up in price in this, but going to amps. Let's talk about amps. Maybe a bass amp. Let's talk about that first, and then.
Yeah. So if you have a bass player, a bass amp is going to be probably the easiest and low cost way to get a bass guitar into the system and so that they can hear it. You can plug a bass guitar directly in with a direct box into your sound system, but your player is not going to be able to hear super well unless you have a really great monitoring system there. But I like a good bass guitar amp. Fender makes a series of amps called the Rumble series. The Fender Rumble, hands down my favorite amp for smaller playing opportunities. So they have, you can get as small as a 20 watt up to a 500 watt amp with this Fender Rumble system, but they're super lightweight. They're pretty affordable, and they just sound so good. So I love the Fender Rumble series. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if you have electric guitar players, like I said earlier, I think electric guitars need some sort of amp or amp simulator. And for electric guitars, I think if you ask them, their choice of amps are going to be very personal as well, because the amp really becomes part of their sound. The amp is as much of an instrument as the guitar itself. So if you have a guitar player, I would probably let them choose their amp. Like if they have an amp, let them bring it to you. But if they're looking for recommendations, again, Fender makes great electric guitar amps. Or you can look into these new modeling pedals. They're a little more expensive, but usually get effects built into them as well.
Yeah, and I know there's a wide range with electric guitar amps. As a guitar player,
you're a electric guitar player.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
But if you're looking to purchase something, it's not really about the wattage or size.
Yeah.
Because you're looking for like a clean sound.
Yeah.
And we mentioned in a previous episode that you want a different sound, so maybe adding an overdrive into a clean amp will work. And for praise and worship, the style of what we play, we're not looking for something super dirty, something super
high
loud.
gain.
We don't need high gain. We don't need something super loud either. We're just adding that color and texture for that.
So small electric guitar amps are great.
Yeah, and then you also don't have to get something that's super heavy.
Yeah, which is great.
Which is great as well. Last instrument, kind of to cover all of this. Let's talk about drums. What would you recommend with drums there?
Yeah, drums are the hard thing, because everyone always likes the idea of drums until you start actually hearing drums in a small space, because they tend to be loud.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll always have someone bring up the option. Well, what about an electronic drum kit? And there are some really good sounding electric kits out there. My only caution about that is talk to your drummer and see what they are comfortable with. Most of the drummers I've worked with do not like the electronic kits. They say they don't feel as good, they don't respond as well. But like I said, they have gotten a lot better. And if you've got a newer player who may be willing to give it a go, you can absolutely control volumes better with an electronic kit than you can with an acoustic drum set. But the feel is very different. So talk to your drummer and kind of come to that decision together. I think if I had a preference, I would go with an acoustic kit, but you just have to really maintain your volume.
Yeah. The scary thing that about an acoustic kit is that, of course, you can buy a full kit like at a certain price. I'm not for sure exactly what the price is, but the cymbals are very, very cheaply made. Like drums are very expensive to begin with.
And I think for drums, I think it's safe to say you can get a very student level or intermediate level drum kit, so the drums themselves, but put good quality heads on them.
Yeah.
It's going to take a little bit. Like, heads are an investment, but if you rehead it just once, and it'll last you for a couple of years for sure. But with proper tuning and proper heads, you can make a student kit sound really good.
Yeah.
Cymbals, though, are a different story.
Yeah.
You do want to spend some money on some decent quality cymbals.
Yeah.
But
those are points. It's hard for a small budget church to upgrade the whole cymbal, the whole cymbal set. So maybe focusing on a hi-hat. Let's upgrade the hi-hat first. That's used the most. Let's upgrade the ride first, and then we can worry about another cymbal. But those are different points. Those are different items in your list.
Yeah.
Because of the price there.
Yeah.
And then even if you're not prepared to buy a drum set yet, or even have the budget for a drum set, or even a percussionist, a drummer. If you're training somebody, maybe the best thing for you in a guitar is adding a cajon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Adding a cajon, and I think that can go for $150
bucks, yeah.
200. That's not going to break the bank.
Yeah.
But that's going to add so much.
It
to
really
your,
does, and volumes are much easier to maintain on
Yeah.
a cajon than a full drum kit. You just
Yeah, and then throw. I keep mentioning this, but an upright with a mic on it. You can throw a mic right on the back of a
Yep.
cajon, and then now it's going into your PA system.
Yep.
Yeah, this has been great conversation. I'm a gearhead.
Yeah.
I don't know if you are as much, Rachel, but we could talk about this gear all day long.
all day.
Like we said earlier, we can have a full episode on just electric guitar overdrives,
Yes.
let alone the whole pedal board.
Yeah.
But I hope this was good information and gives you kind of in the right mindset of what to do on with the budget that you have. And just some things to remember is if you don't have a budget, talk to your pastor and start a budget, but be good stewards of that budget because you're pulling from other money elsewhere. You're creating something that wasn't there, so the money's just not going to appear. Also, don't be afraid to look for deals. Don't be afraid to look for used things that can upgrade. That used is okay, right? Used is okay. We gave you a couple resources there, and then also maximize what you already have. Like use what your church has, whether it's the PA system or just an upright. Like use the equipment that your church already has. And then lastly, no matter what you purchase, make sure it's good quality because you want this to last for years to come.
Yeah.
You want to cry once, buy once, instead of having to replace that multiple times. And then within your list, make sure you prioritize and present that to your pastor and to your church leaders. Well, thank you guys for joining me in all these episodes. If you don't know Transmission, go listen to some Transmission. They got great praise and worship music out for what, a decade now.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for joining me, and thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for listening to this episode of Worship Leading for Small Churches. If you liked this episode, we would appreciate if you'd like and share this with others. Tune in next Wednesday at 10 a.m. where we continue our discussion. We will see you next time. Thank you for listening, and God bless.